My name is Serena. It is my great pleasure to welcome you all to this session, both here in Glasgow in person and to our digital audience who are tuning in for this session. If you have any questions that come up during the panel, you may raise them at the end, but we do also have a way to ask questions online, which is via Slido, and the code and the link to do so will show up here. So please send in questions if you have any. Now, it is my great pleasure to introduce this panel on climate justice and human rights. Please join me in welcoming Kumi, Naidoo, Ylli, Alija, Diana, Lopera, and Mair Kelly.
Hi, folks. We can take it off a mask, yeah? Okay. So, this is a time for humanity to be humble and recognize that nature does not negotiate. We cannot change the science. All we can change is political will. And we need to start doing things differently. So, Maya, Ylli, and Diana, and myself want to start doing that. So, for all the panels you've been, people start speaking at you. So we want to take the first 5-10 minutes to give you the floor. And we're wanting you to just highlight a few questions, concerns, or issues that you have in your mind so that we can, in our comments, try to meet your expectation. This is called disruption. And I ask you not to be shy. Otherwise, I'll start pointing at you. While you're thinking about that, though, I just wanted to say that there's been a bit of breaking news that I thought we discussed it and we thought it was very important that we shared with you. It's from Australia, and we think it's quite an important piece of news that it's very pertinent to this COP. And the headline is, "Man announces he will quit drinking by 2050. A Sydney man has set an ambitious target to phase out his alcohol consumption within the next 29 years, as part of an impressive plan to improve his health. The program will see Greg Taylor, 73, continue to drink as normal for the foreseeable future before reducing his consumption in 2049, when he turns 101. He has assured friends it will not affect his drinking plans in the short or medium term. Taylor said it was important not to rush to switch to non-alcoholic beverages, and said, and I quote, "It's not realistic to transition to zero alcohol overnight. This requires a steady phased approach when nothing changes for at least 2 decades. He said, adding that he may need to make additional investments in beer consumption in the short term to make sure no night out is worse off. Taylor, though, will also be able to bring forward drinking credits earned from the days he hasn't drunk over the past 40 years, meaning the actual end date for consumption may actually be 2060, where he will be much older than 101. To assist with the transition, Taylor has bought a second beer fridge, which he describes as the capture and storage method." Does that sound familiar to you? Okay, so I know it's a bit intimidating to give you the floor immediately, but are there 1 or 2 people good to just say either a concern, a question? There we go. Where's the roving mic? Yeah, it's coming, it's coming.
Well, first I want to appreciate my friends here on the panel. And can I get a big round of applause for the YMCA, please? Thanks. Thank you very much. And I guess my question would be, what is it exactly climate justice, and what does it have to do with human rights? And how are Indigenous people involved with all of this?
Great. We're not going to answer them immediately. We're making notes, okay? So what has climate justice got to do with human rights, and particularly, where do Indigenous peoples fit? Okay, thanks.
Hi, yeah, so we all have lots of calls for action for leaders to make significant change, but what calls for action do you have for the likes of us, who are community members and trying to make small changes with local initiatives? So what do you want us to take from COP and from tonight?
Thank you. What's your name, by the way?
Rachel.
And what is your name? And where are you from?
I'm from Peru.
Wonderful.
Edinburgh.
Edinburgh. We're not holding that against you. You probably had the lowest carbon footprint getting here, so you know. Anybody else? Please.
How do you measure climate justice? So at what point you said, okay, we have a system that is completely just for everybody. So just to find the end goal of all of this, to have a clear, vision of where we're going and when can we achieve this.
Your name, sir?
Manuel from Venezuela.
Wonderful. Welcome.
Ireland as well.
Okay, can I just make one comment? The diversity of the 3 questions asked is 1,000 times more than the diversity inside the COP. Just from where the people asked it. So let's keep with that. And my sister, it looks like you're from Africa, but I might be getting it wrong.
No, you're Nigerian.
Okay.
Thank you so much. We actually have a question or point from our digital audience joining us. We have someone from Pavel from Czech Republic, and he asked, what is the biggest lie that people keep perpetuating and using as an excuse? It's a very deep question.
Wow. That must be the name was Havel. This must be a relative of Václav Havel who led the change that happened there, because that's a deep, deep question. So biggest lie being perpetuated. Another one here?
We hear a lot about the climate refugees lately, but we don't know exactly what the climate refugee is, or if this term even it's legal, or what it is. Maybe if you want to tell us a bit more about it. Thank you.
Where are you from?
Ylli from Romania.
Romania.
Yes.
Luz, we're doing great on diversity here. Yeah. Let's keep it going. Once we hit the one person from the same country, we're going to stop, okay?
Hi there. I'd love to hear what the panel has to say about what does moral courage tangibly look like when you're having the conversation or perhaps the argument with companies, with emitters, who are not driven by a moral compass when it comes to climate. What does moral courage look like in that situation?
Wonderful. And you from?
Graham from London.
Welcome. Thanks. Well, let's take one more. Okay, there's an enthusiast again. We'll take 2 and we'll take you and then go there, and then we'll hear the wonderful people on the panel, okay?
Yeah, so it feels like we're entering a new territory slightly, in which it's like inaction against growing risk is leading to more and more determined and slightly angsty campaigning tactics, which may well be right. All I was going to ask, in your view, is that the right way? So you'll know what I mean by that. There's different groups who are beginning to turn the heat up, turn the volume up, because they're rightly frustrated. But there's also an argument that says, turn it up too much, and you'll lose the right to speak, which then leads to an anarchy. I'm just looking 10 years ahead, thinking if the next however many COPs don't actually do anything, at what point would you as a panel say, it's time, we need to turn the volume really high and take the risk that we end up with world anarchy?
Okay. Where are you from? London. London, yeah. That question is about insulate Britain and Extinction Rebellion. Right? We're going to take that question, and I think that's the first question. Let's take that up because I think that's a key question. So,
thank you. I'm Rebecca from Zambia. I would like to find out from the panel if there are any tentative measures, because we're discussing climate justice and human rights. Is there anything regarding animals? Because where I come from, we protect animals. We have a lot of wildlife. So in the plans and the discussions that are happening today, is there anybody who's talking about the safety or the rights of animals because they are part of the ecosystem? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Can you give yourself a round of applause for those excellent questions? And I'm just going to say to Diana, Ylli, and Mair, I think maybe if it's okay with all of you all, we rejiggle what we were going to do. The questions were so rich. Let's start with those questions, and if we have time, we then cover what we were planning. Is that okay? Yeah. Cool. Okay, so who from here would like to pick up with that question about how much is the situation at the moment calling for the heat to be turned up as much as Extinction Rebellion and Fridays for the Future and Insulate Britain, for example, is doing here? Or do you think it's a bit too much? Who would like to go? Since you are closest to the UK, maybe you could go first.
Okay, cool. I haven't spoken into a mic before, so bear with me. Tiny bit nervous. I suppose I think, you know, in the phrase turning the heat up, I think as the earth gets warmer, people are going to be turning that heat up. And I can understand the frustration and the anger when you see these negotiations over and over and over and over again, and they're just doing the same talking and the same waffling and nothing's coming out of it. I can empathize with people's reactions myself. I'm not that kind of person, but I do think, like, I'm not too experienced with Extinction Rebellion, I'd say. But I think, like, looking at the protests and stuff in like Glasgow the last couple of days and the experiences of people being effectively silenced when they weren't really doing anything wrong other than peaceful protest, I think that it depends on, there's differing perceptions of turning the heat up. I think some people might, I'm not in any advocate of violence. I think once we get violent, then I'm not here for it. But I do think there's a sense of urgency, and I think that urgency has to be respected in a certain amount, because we can't really, like, dilly-dally. You know, we have to do something now. And I think as young people especially, it's even more frustrating and urgent because we know we're going to be living in that cesspit in a couple of years. But yeah, that's my perspective on it anyway.
Wonderful. Mair, just take a minute and tell people your journey in life and what you're doing.
My journey in life. So my name's Mair. I use she, her pronouns. I'm from the absolute sticks of Ireland. I'm from the Mizzen Head. Yeah, up West Cork. So I'm from YMCA Ireland, and I'm a mix of many things, but I'm working there at the moment as part-time as a youth worker on a climate justice project. And we are working with an amazing group of young people, beginning conversations about climate justice. What is it? What does it mean? How are we a part of it? What role do we have to play? Because I think a lot of the time, a big part of climate justice is empathy. And there's no better way to build empathy than by building a community. Because once you meet someone, like we were having chats earlier with the other YMCA delegates, once you meet someone, you hear their story and how they're connected to this issue, it becomes your issue. And that's kind of what we're hoping to do with this Future Generations Climate Justice Project. But yeah, rural West Cork.
Wonderful. I think she deserves a round of applause, don't you think? So, Diana, tell us a little bit about you, and then how would you answer the question?
Aloha mai kako, hafade, kamusta. My name is Diana Lopera. I am originally from the island of Saipan, but I currently live in Hawaii. I am a child of immigrant parents from the Philippines. Thank you. But yeah, I am here on behalf of the World YMCA as a youth ambassador with the YMCA of Honolulu in Hawaii. Yeah.
Just so much more than that.
Yeah, so a little bit about me, I guess. My background is in global environmental science. I'm a scientist. And really what I can bring to the table is just the story that I know best, which is mine, right? And so I'm super excited to share with you the perspectives of what it means to be a scientist and what I perceive of, and how I perceive to be a scientist as I continue to navigate my way and collaborate and interact with Indigenous communities and see what it means to actually tackle the climate crisis and bring in these different perspectives into the table. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Thank you. So, Ylli, introduce yourself. He's from Kosovo, and tell us your answer to that key question.
Okay. So, hello everybody. My name is Ylli, and I am from Kosovo. I work at the YMCA in Kosovo, where mainly I coordinate activities for young people. So I studied psychology, and my passion and the reason why I'm at COP is are young people, because I love working with young people and I love like being the voice of young people. So in this case, I feel like very happy like to be part of this panel and also to discuss like the moral, the justice of climate and also the human rights, which are things that need to be discussed like not only like in panels but daily, on daily basis. So I'm really happy to be here, and I'm going to present just a bit of the work that YMCA Kosovo does for people that don't know. So we have like we train young people on causes like leadership, climate change, deforestation, and we create campaigns with them in order like to protect environment. As also the reason why I'm here at the COP is also to present the film which is going to be showcased in a Climax Cinema, which is a Team Trees project that speaks about deforestation and the process how we tackle that thing in Kosovo.
Thank you. Okay, now, in the interest of time, you don't have to clap for anything else unless you absolutely want to clap moving forward, right? That's to warmly welcome them. Now, you know what? I'm going to put somebody on the spot and embarrass them. I'm not sure, though. You know, with the masks here, you can't, sometimes you think it's one person and somebody else. But I think the person sitting there is Princess Esmeralda from Belgium. Is that Princess? So, because she, is it? That is Princess Esmeralda from Belgium. And she got arrested at the Extinction Rebellion protests in 2020. Yeah? And I think what we all, thank you Esme, thank you, and it was a very powerful statement. It moved many people. That when somebody who doesn't have to put their lives on the line take part in a process, it's about saying how urgent the crisis is. But what I think we all are saying, though, is that we support resistance to injustice that is peaceful, that is dignified, and sometimes, quite often, it is the overreaction of the police. Thank you. It's the reaction of the police and the authorities that turn things into violence. But I think what we're all saying is that time of urgency has arrived, but we need to make sure that the protests are peaceful and dignified. Otherwise, what's behind your question is we lose the people that we need to win over. Okay, so now the second question, I think Esme deserves a round of applause. And all the people who got arrested and...
Yeah, I think my second cousin in London, I remember seeing something in the news that she got arrested. She's like a... Is she in her 50s? Oh, I'm going to embarrass myself. She's definitely not. I'm not sure how old she is.
And
Don't
but
quote me on that.
So, and I think the important point you're making is that this is an intergenerational struggle. And that's a good segue to the question that what's your sense about human rights and climate justice? Because I will just introduce by saying that perhaps one of the worst violations of intergenerational rights, intergenerational solidarity, is to be found in the climate situation, because my generation and those that came before me have been living as if we don't have children and grandchildren coming after us. And we just want to say, as a group here, that all of you who are worried about saving the planet, that you should not worry about saving the planet. The planet is absolutely fine. The planet is absolutely fine. Why do we say this? If we continue on the path that we're on, we continue to destroy our water, we destroy our soil, the heat, the temperature goes up, we're not able to produce food. The end result is we will be gone, the planet will still be here. And the good news of everybody who's worried about saving the planet, once we become extinct as a species, the oceans will recover, the forests will grow back, and so on. So let's be clear. Don't worry about the planet. The struggle to avert catastrophic climate change is nothing more and nothing less than protecting our children and their children's future. And that's why the urgency is right here, right now. Okay, so now, how do we answer the question about climate justice and human rights? What are your reflections? Let's switch it around. Let's start with Hule this time.
Yeah, so as Kumi was saying, like for example, if we don't act and if we don't do something, or if, for example, we like stay passive and only damage our environment, then there are not going to be human rights because we are not going to exist as a human beings. So they are very linked together, and if, for example, we don't put justice to our environment, we are not going to exist at all. So I think it's the right time to act, and to be linked with the first question that was made, is the right time to act right now and to make our voice be heard loud, because if we don't speak now, I think it's too late.
Thanks. Diana?
So I don't know how I missed this, but what I do in my day job is I'm part of the State of Hawaii Climate Change Mitigation and Adaptation Commission, and I serve as their climate change communication specialist. So basically I talk with a wide range of audiences about climate change. And what is very clear is that you can't talk to every group the same way, right? So, for example, I have a data that shows 100 years of sea level rise. I can't show it to every group and expect them to see the connection, to see the urgency of the climate crisis. And so what works is that we connect the dots into the issues that they care about. Because whenever we talk about climate change, more often than not, we think of it as an isolated event, but really climate change is connected to all the other issues that we're seeing today, right? So with with sea level rise in Hawaii and Pacific Island nations, that means that the people and the businesses that live along our coastlines that are at risk to losing it, right? And connecting it to public health, they're connecting it to environmental justice, social economic issues, it's all connected. And so trying to find that connection is really how we start to begin having these conversations and moving forward in the right direction that we need to.
Thank you. So you're saying we need to make the struggle to avert catastrophic climate change a human-centric struggle. Not that we ignore animals, as my sister from Zambia said, but quite often the problem is we talk about the climate struggle in a way that excludes most people. Degrees, parts per million, acronyms like you're drowning in an alphabet soup. I mean, if you go look at any of the documents at the COP, you'll be dizzy, you might faint by the time you read all the acronyms and try and figure out what they are. What's your take on this question, Mair?
So I may or may not have gotten swept away listening to these guys. What was the question again?
How do you see the linkage between human rights and climate justice? Right?
Well, I suppose we're intrinsically linked. You know, we're living on this planet. We're here, you know, on this ground, and we're feeding off our climate, I suppose, not really giving much back. And it's linked because we're all organic beings, we're all part of this world, and I feel like that connection should be enough. I think like both these guys, they cover different kind of aspects of climate justice there. Like a big thing for me, being from a rural stock, is the concept of a just transition, and how, you know, you've got to bring people with you when in your journey towards, you know, climate justice and tackling the climate issues that we're facing, that, you know, as you were saying earlier, like, the planet's not dying, so people are killing it. And we really have to, ensure that when we're talking about climate and these issues and the challenges and the ways that we can counteract it, is that we're doing it in an inclusive manner. We're not leaving people behind. Because I think like from like the Pacific community and like the small island states, they have a really good idea of how to deal with these issues, but they're not necessarily supported by the rest of the global community. So I think in order to like fully tackle these things, you have to build upon that global community. We're all here at COP. Some people aren't really, doing that, building that community, but I think like what we saw on the streets and stuff, that's what I see as like kind of, I suppose, the justice aspect, is that people shouldn't be the center of it. It's that people, I suppose, it's the social justice thing, the way that people are affected and those impacts, that it's not those who are experiencing the worst effects, it's not their fault. It's the bigger, more developed countries. We have a responsibility there. And I suppose we have a responsibility as a global community to, stand in solidarity and to listen and to amplify those voices. Yeah.
Thank you. I just want to add that, there's another term that people are beginning to use more so now. In the context of COVID, we talk about vaccine apartheid, right? Where people in Europe and the United States and so on are having the third booster shot, and only 5% of the people in Africa have had the first shot, right? And if you can talk about vaccine apartheid, then we can talk about climate apartheid, because those parts of the world that contributed most historically to the problem have predominantly white populations, and those parts of the world that are facing the most brutal and first impacts are predominantly populations of people of color. Now, that's a reality, and I believe part of what we need to do is to be able to put all of these issues on the table, not in an accusatory way, but in a way where we understand how we got here. If we don't understand how we got here, we are never going to figure out how to get out of here. So I leave that thought with you. And then I want to pick up a very challenging question that was asked, which is, how do you measure climate justice? Right, a very difficult question. So does anybody, now what we're going to do is, from the questions that were asked, not everybody will answer, whoever feels that they would like to answer. Anyone would like to pick up that question, how do you measure climate justice? While you thinking whether you want to answer, let me just say that there was somebody who once said, not everything that counts can be measured, and not everything that can be measured counts. Right? It's worth bearing that in mind. You want to give it a shot?
Yeah, so as Kumi was saying, that like you cannot measure everything, but you can measure the impact and you can see the result with your own eyes. For example, if you see that forests are regenerating, that means that the impact is being measured and the success is there. If you see like the biodiversity is being realived, then you see that the effect are there and the success is happening. So it's not like you can measure with numbers, but you can see the effect of climate and how it's changing with your own eyes, as we are seeing like how unfortunately is not going in the right direction. So how we see the negative stuff happening, we can see also the positive. Not everything has to be measured in order to be counted as successful. So that's the answer.
Thank you. By the way, I didn't say only one person, but I thought at least one person. Please jump in if you want to add anything. If you're okay, then we can move to the question on indigenous people and climate change, right? And there's two questions here. One is, what can indigenous peoples teach us about how we get out of the crisis that we find? And what is your sense of how indigenous people are being treated at this COP? Right? Does anybody have a reflection on that? Please.
So we hear all these solutions that we hear in COP about how to tackle the climate crisis, net zero, carbon sequestration, and all these big words that we hear from our world leaders, but actually something that I don't hear, that we don't hear a lot is what can we learn from other sources of knowledge. I have this quote. It's an Olelo no Ea, which is a native Hawaiian proverb that I came across during my time in Hawaii when I came in 2016, and it really helped shape the perspective of how I see where I get the knowledge that and the perspectives that help shape mine. So I'm gonna try to read it the best I can. It's Aohe pau ka ike ika halau ho'okahi. And that translates to not all knowledge is learned in one school. And so really looking into sources of knowledge that are not just within these Western institutions that we were brought upon, looking into Indigenous peoples and see what they have done, because we don't have to reinvent the wheel to find new innovations. Because if we look at, for example, Pacific Island nations, they were able to survive and persist for hundreds, thousands of years with their limited resources because they have done through trial and error and understanding and having that deep relationship with nature and the land that they live in, where they were allowed to, not they were allowed, but they were able to thrive and be the resilient communities that they are. So usually we don't want to repeat history when we talk about history, but I think this is something we need to look into and see the answers of what we can find in the past to see how we can shape our future.
Thank you. Would you like to add to that?
That was really good.
That was excellent.
This is where you do a little round of applause, guys.
Yeah. Well done, Maya. So if I can just say that one of the proverbs that really moved me as a 22-year-old when I fled into exile from Apartheid South Africa, I had this poster in my room at Oxford University, and it said, only when the last tree has been cut, only when the last liver has been polluted, only when the last fish has been caught, will humanity realize that they cannot eat money. Okay? Let's hope, though, that we will rise, and let's be blunt about it, because this measurement question was an important challenge, and that is, we are literally 1 minute to midnight. The window of opportunity is very small and fast closing. But that does not mean we do not have hope, and we'll return to hope in a second. Diana, you want to add?
Yeah, sorry. I guess so the second part of the question is, how do we see this play out at COP with the representation of Indigenous peoples? There's not much. Like, I heard that there are only 4 Pacific Island nations represented at COP this year, when Pacific Island nations will be the first to feel the big impacts of climate change, yet they don't have this seat, the voice in the table that they need to be in. And so I actually was just talking to my friend Ylli right before this panel, and he was telling me about what he witnessed in the Blue Zone today. So he was in the Blue Zone, and he found this beautiful Indigenous art piece that was created by Agar Tejada from the Guna people of Panama. And so he reached out to her and asked, hey, let's meet, I want to talk about your art, it's so beautiful. And he realized that she cannot meet him in the Blue Zone because she does not have access to the Blue Zone. So imagine they have her art, her work, all set up in the Blue Zone for everybody to see and appreciate, yet the artist that was not there, that actually created the art, that contributed and shared a piece of her and her people, is not. So this is just one example, and it was really, Dewey was really frustrated, and I can just imagine just frustrated it is to have Indigenous peoples and people of color and all of these nations that will be affected the most not be a part of the table in these discussions and negotiations. Just so.
Thank you so much for that. If you might just allow me an indulgence, In 2015, I was in the Pacific Island states, in Kiribati, in Vanuatu, and Fiji, and I learned a new slogan, which I had never heard before. People were chanting 1.5 to stay alive. 1.5 to stay alive. I can tell you, I was then the head of Greenpeace International. I tell you, I felt sick in my stomach, right? And when I spoke to young people especially, they were telling me, Kiribati already has had to lease land in Fiji with the possibility that the entire nation will have to be relocated. Try to just think about that. I went to speak to some young people who were part of the Young Catholic Association in a church. And I still remember them, and if you see tears in my eyes, it's because I'm thinking about them. They said to me, we don't want to leave. Our parents, grandparents, our ancestors are buried here. This is our identity. This is our life. And we didn't contribute to this problem. And we are suffering. 6 months later, I saw them in Paris. Some of my new friends I met in the Pacific during that visit. And then they asked me to come and join them in one rally, you know, inside the space. And I went there and I thought, okay, I can chant the slogan they taught me 6 months ago, 1.5 to stay alive. And as I start chanting, they say, stop, stop, stop. You got the slogan wrong. It's changed in 6 months. And the new slogan was, 1.5, we might survive. 1.5, we might survive. So let's be very clear. The people that are paying the first and most brutal price for the greed, the exploitation, the domination of a handful of powerful nations are the ones that contributed least to it, and that is why we say there's climate injustice, and that is why we need climate justice. So that's a good transition to the question that one of our brothers asked about climate refugees, right? So, does anybody have a reflection on the challenge of climate refugees?
I suppose, in my other hat back home is in Ireland we have a really, really cruel system. It's called direct provision. Essentially, people seek asylum and they live in these B&Bs, like tiny rooms, raising their families for up to like 10 years. I know someone who's been there 13. But as you were saying, climate refugees, at the moment under international law, you can't seek asylum on the grounds of climate change or climate disasters. One of the panelists earlier was talking about this as well, that it's just not under the covenant. I don't necessarily agree with that, because I think it just says a lot about, I think it's closing a door. There's all this concern about how, especially prominently we're in the UK, which is the irony, but there's this thing that, if we let people seek asylum, then, you know, they're going to take our jobs, they're going to, you know, come into our towns, our culture's going to disappear, which I think is an absolute load of rubbish. I really disagree with that. I think the fact that people are trying to seek asylum on the grounds of climate change really says a lot about what we're doing in this planet. I think it says a lot that we aren't opening those doors, that people are, we're causing all these effects. We're the root of this issue, and there's people who are struggling, whose lands and homes are being washed away, and they're trying to seek our assistance, reach out a hand to our community, and that people are basically effectively shutting the door in their face. Because I think there's all these concerns and stuff, but I don't think it's something that we should be. I think we should be opening that door, because how can we not show empathy to someone in that situation? If we go along this track, we're going to be in that position in a couple of years, and then it's going to be fine. We're going to be like, oh yeah, no, let's let people in then, because it suits, and the majority is affected. But I think it just, talking to people who are suffering those extreme circumstances of climate change and not being able to seek or get assistance, it does not seem right to me. And I don't know if or when that law will ever be changed, but I think, you know, one of the grounds to seeking asylum is a fear of, you know, it's persecution or torture or prosecution because you're part of the LGBT community. But I just, climate, I think we should be doing more to help people who are trying to seek assistance from natural disasters and extreme climate, because how can we refuse someone a home? I just don't see it.
Thank you, Maya. Diana, Ylli, you want to add to that?
No, I just think that if we don't accept like people coming from these difficulties background, and for example, so they had like flood, that is going to happen also to you if because we can see the impact of climate change. So we should be more open to new cultures, and we should be more open like to accept others and offers other the chance, because sooner or later we're going to be in that position that we need help from somebody. And imagine if that somebody doesn't show and close the doors. So it's going to be terrible feeling, but also I think it's something that world leaders should approach like more open. Like when these things happen, nobody leaves their home because they want, but sometimes they are forced to. So if those doors are closing, I don't know what to say. I think it's time for the world leaders to open the gates, in these cases, not only about like a climate crisis, but in general with wars and stuff like this. I've been also personally a refugee, and I know how important it is like for a country to open the doors to another country and to let other people enter in that country, because it brings diversity and it makes a country more beautiful.
Yeah. I think that requires a round of applause. Thank you. Thank you, Ylli. Kofi Annan, the former UN Secretary General, in the last conversation I had a chance to speak to him, he was urging me as the sort of chairperson of the African-wide social movement called Africans Rising for Justice, Peace and Dignity. He said, Kumi, you must make sure that Africans Rising takes the issue of migration and refugees very seriously. And then he told me a story. He said when he was a young UN officer, and the door, a poster that he had in the back of the door was a poster of Albert Einstein with carrying, who was a refugee by the way, who was carrying, you know, some things on his back, whatever they could take, kind of, you know, how it is when you're a refugee, you take what you can from when you have to flee. And the slogan at the bottom was, when a refugee comes, he comes with much more than just what he has on his back. And for the people of Europe and the people of North America, and all the places who are resisting migration, I'll tell you, there's another reason why you should definitely understand that migration is a very legitimate part of climate adaptation. Because without migration, the quality of your food would have been awful. Maybe I said that too strong, eh?
Maybe, I think you said it just right.
Maybe let's put it this way: migration has significantly enhanced the quality of food in Europe and elsewhere. Okay, we're doing well with time and this thing, but I'm just going to say which questions we didn't touch, and so we can try and pick it up in the responses, because we have to go to what gives us hope, right? We want to end on a hopeful note. Okay, so. The questions that we didn't tackle is, what is the biggest lie being propagated in how we address climate change? What does moral courage look like? And how do we address the question of animals, right? So those are the three questions. So if any of you can try and bring that in, I will also try and help. But the question that we want to spend the last 15 minutes is the pessimism of our analysis of how bad things are can only be overcome by the optimism of our actions. We do not have the right to be pessimistic. We do not have the luxury, we do not have the luxury to be pessimistic. And I want to just say that, you know, just to put it in perspective, I was speaking at a meeting in the US once, and I was talking about how the forests are collapsing and the oceans are dying and inequalities are rising and systemic racism is continuing and so on. And a very unhappy delegate at the end of my speech put up a hand and said, Dr. Naidoo, have you heard of Martin Luther King? And I said, yes, he inspired me and many people in my country. Then he said, do you know what his most famous speech was called? Thinking it was a trick question, I said it very quietly and gently. I said, I have a dream. And she shouted back at me, she said, yes, it was I have a dream, but when I hear you speak, you have a bloody nightmare. Everything is collapsing around you. But in that story lies the challenge of leadership at the moment. How do we find the right balance between speaking truth to power, not sanitizing the fact that, as we would put it in Afrikaans in South Africa, and I think you'll understand the sentence when I say it, that ons is deep, deep, deep in the kak, right? Does anybody need a translation? Right? How do we deal with that reality that we're in a deep, deep crisis, but how do we do it in a way that is filled with love, with courage, with optimism? Because we don't want to immobilize people. If anything, we need everybody to be engaged right now. So we have to find the right balance between being honest in our analysis, but optimistic in how we seek to change things. And when Amnesty International, when I was the Secretary General, gave Fridays for the Future and Greta Thunberg and the leadership of Fridays for the Future the Ambassador of Conscience Award in Washington, D.C. in 2019, I said, please do us one favor. Don't let the Trumps and the Bolsonaros and the Orbans of the world deprive you of your childhood, right? By all means, continue to fight. In fact, continue to fight even harder, because we need your perspective, your freshness of looking at old problems and new ideas and so on. But do it with love. Do it while you're singing. Do it while you're dancing. And remember that activism actually in the end is quite sexy, right? So this is the challenge that we have, right? We must, and I said, don't give the benefit of those that have driven us to this point of destruction the benefit of knowing that they also have managed to depress us. If there's one reason why I'm always smiling and making jokes and so on, is I don't want them to know that they've succeeded. I might, when I'm at home in my, lonely moments, feel depressed. But when I'm in public, I'm keeping a sense of optimism, and I invite each and every one of you to do the same. And so let me turn, how do you keep optimistic? What is the things that keep you going? What keeps your sense that we can still, even though we're running out of time fast, what gives you the sense we can turn things around? Ylli?
Yes. So as I said earlier, my passion is working with young people. So the main drive and the main reason are young people. When I see, for example, when I work with young people, I see how much they are engaged in climate change and, for example, fighting deforestation and being active in this issue. That is what drives me also and inspires me to do more for them. And not only for them, but also for the whole society. So young people, for me, are the biggest drive and the biggest inspiration. And I remember, for example, when I was young, we didn't care that much about the environment. But now I see people that I work with, they are very passionate about it. And they are the voice, not because we tend to hear this a lot, like young people are the future. No, young people are not the future. Young people are the present, and they are our drive. And I think it's time for the world leaders to leave the leadership more to young people, because they know how to keep the game going.
Can I make one small disagreement with what you said?
Yes.
When you say world leaders, you know what you must do? You must say world leaders in inverted commas. Because quite frankly, that is giving them too much of credit. Honestly, I say that seriously. Right? I say that seriously. We are not seeing the kind of leadership that we have. I mean, we can just start with this country, but let's leave it for a moment. Diana?
I just want to echo what Ylli was saying about the power of young people. Really, growing up, growing up, I have teachers that tell me, oh, you should look up to this person, look up to this, look because of all the things they did. But honestly, it's so hard to look up to people if you don't relate to them, if you feel they don't understand your experiences. And when I look at young people, I see people that look like me. They talk like me, they think like me, they live the experiences that I have. We all grew up with climate change, you know, with the impacts of climate change in our experiences. And so something that I like to say is that we're no longer going to wait for us to grow up, to have the fancy titles, to have all the years of experience just to be taken seriously. Because the real leaders that we see today, that I see today, are not those in suits in the blue zone. The real leaders I see today are the people right in front of you, the people that are here with me, the people that are actually doing action and meaningful change within their communities to drive action and to make the change that we need to see, that we want to see for the futures that we will inherit tomorrow. Yeah.
Thank you. Maya.
I suppose what gives me hope, so I suppose, for context, I arrived to COP after it had started, you know, so I was reading Twitter, I was taking way too much social media, but it was just all the awfulness that is happening, the inaccessibility, the discrimination, and you feel really tired because, you know, you want things, you have hope, you want things to be good, you want people to listen, and I was feeling really bad. I wasn't sure I was even looking forward to it. I was like, I don't know whether I want to be in this environment. It's just not a vibe. But then I got here, and the first official day I was here was during the march, the action. And going out on the street with all these amazing people who were chanting, who were protesting, there was all these beautiful presentations and floats, and it was just, it was so vibrant. And I had so many amazing conversations with people, and I felt it was absolutely awful weather, and I was cold and wet and tired, but I felt energized, I felt motivated, I felt like, yes, this is why I'm here. And I think that community, for me, everything rests on community. Whether it's my tiny community back home in West Cork, hi guys. Whether it's, you know, my national community of Ireland, whether it's our international community, the global community, like meeting at the last night, we've had some great chats with the other YMCA delegates, and I'm learning all about what they're doing, and I feel a part of something that's a group, a community of people that really care, that really want something to change, that are working for change and inspiring more young people to get involved. And it gives me so much more hope. It motivates me. I think it kind of, when you're feeling tired or scared or frustrated about trying to get something to change and it's just not really happening, it's that community that motivates me, that makes me feel alive again. Because I think sometimes when you're advocating for something, it can be quite lonely. You can feel you're taking on this burden, you're trying to change something, and you can feel so tired. But then when you talk to people, it's like, this is why I'm doing it. So I think that's what gives me hope. I think that also, thinking about it now is what underpins, I suppose, moral courage. It's when you're scared or frustrated or you're reaching like what you feel is a dead end, is that you keep going, you persevere, you have the courage to keep going despite feeling that you're not getting anywhere, in the hope that you might, or the hope that you're changing something for one person. I think that's what gives me a shred of hope. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Maya. Can I ask you a yes/no question?
Okay.
A yes/no question for Maya. Do you agree with your former President Mary Robinson when she said a few days ago that the problem with this COP is that it's far too male, pale, and stale?
Absolutely yes.
Okay. So, just a quick sense. Anybody wants to reflect on how they think the COP is going?
So I can share, today is my first day so at the COP, and I'm really looking forward to be engaged more, and so far it has been great. Even it's like one day, but so far I really enjoyed the experience, and also seeing what other countries are doing is quite inspiring, and also seeing young people at the COP is quite inspiring because we see that there is hope.
Great. Diana?
So today is my first official day as well. I haven't been able to go to the Blue Zone today, but really my expectations for this COP is to learn and to learn from others, learn their perspectives, learn their stories, and share mine, and share these ideas and to bring it back home. And because really, before we can even begin to have these conversations about change, we have to first understand where we're coming from, who we're talking to. And so really I see this opportunity to be here with you guys and in COP as an opportunity to just connect, right? Just like how climate change is connected to various issues around the world, so are the solutions. And so really this is just a grateful opportunity, and I'm super happy to be here.
Thank you. Mair, do you want to give you a quick reflection?
Yeah, so I'm really enjoying events like these where we get to chat to other people and get to meet other people and learn from other people. I love that. I love that about COP. What I don't love is the extreme discrimination that people are facing, the inaccessibility of it, how the people who should be here, who should be in the Blue Zone, are not here. That really frustrates me. Because looking at our future, I'm like, how can you not afford to have those people in the room? And to hear the stories of people online who I've never met being like, how can you have a conference and call it a global conference that we're working to create change, we're gonna tackle climate change, and not have the people who are most affected, who are experiencing the most awful experiences, who are their livelihoods, their homes are being destroyed. How can you not have them in the room? How can you be so egotistical to think that you don't need to hear their voices? I think that part of COP I hate. I think it's disgusting not to have that. I'm so grateful to be on the march and the strike and to be meeting people and to be learning from them. I love that solidarity and the fact that so many young people are advocating for that and are amplifying the voices who aren't here, who should be here. I think that is the best thing I've seen in COP. That I'm really glad for, but the rest of it, I'm disappointed. I'm disappointed and frustrated and upset because looking to the future, it kind of makes me really scared, to be honest. Yeah.
Thank you. So we are close to time. We're close to time, and in the spirit of saying we need to smile, sing, and dance our way through the struggle, we're going to end with this song, which I'm going to teach you. It only has 2 words in it. But I just want to quickly honor the questions that we didn't answer quickly with very short answers. Somebody asked, what's the biggest lie being perpetuated here at this COP and always, is that we can get out of this mess by incremental tinkering and rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic while humanity sinks, right? Because the approach of our governments after, say, the financial crisis was system recovery, system protection, system maintenance, when what was needed then and what's needed now is system innovation, system redesign, and system transformation. That's the best short answer I can give to the brother who asked that question. Then what does moral courage looks like? Moral courage looks like what you just heard from the 3 young people, right? We could just be sitting and crying about the future, but they are saying we refuse to stop. We refuse to not try. And my late mum used to say, it is much better to try and fail than to fail to try. And that is what moral courage looks like. It's not being naive. It's about saying that we refuse to accept that humanity cannot be much better than what we are. And to the sister Rebecca from Zambia, who's not in the room, about the animals, let's understand, if we don't protect our biodiversity, humanity is gone. We need, if anything, unless humanity can learn to coexist with nature in a mutually interdependent relationship, unless we do that, we're not going to be around for very, very much longer. So to end on a note of, so in Africa, we never hardly do anything without singing at the end of a meeting and so on. So there's just 2 words in the song, Pambili Africa, which means forward with Africa. But before we do that, I want to ask you, where do your ancestors come from? Anybody knows, anybody want to volunteer? And go back as far as possible. Far as possible. Anybody, where do your ancestors come from? Sorry, where's that? Persia. Okay, I'm going to ask you to go even further back than Persia. Africa. There's a white person there saying Africa. Why do you say that? Okay, so that's where humanity starts from. So when we say, thank you. So when we say Pambili Africa, it's not saying forward with Africa, we're saying forward with the world. Now I can't sing very well, but I'm sure the young people are going to back me up here. So it just goes, actually, shall we stand?
What?
Shall we stand?
We're going to stand?
Yeah, come on, let's stand.
Ah, no.
And have some energy. Pambili, 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 Pambili Africa. Pambili, 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 Pambili Africa. Okay, everybody now. Pambili, 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 Pambili Africa. Pambili, 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 Pambili Africa. Okay, one last time, louder this time. Pambili, 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 Pambili Africa. Pambili, 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 Pambili Africa. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Wow, how amazing was that panel, everyone? Thank you so much to our amazing moderator and panelists for taking part in this, and thank you to the audience for your amazing questions, both digitally and here in person. I want to say, please stick around. There'll be more content throughout the evening. But first, please give a warm welcome to Mike Bromfield, who will tell you about a really exciting event taking place tomorrow.
Hi, everyone. Really, I just wanted to extend an invitation. The work that Ylli and Diana have been doing back home in Kosovo and in Hawaii, we've taken the time over the last 6 weeks to shoot a film and a documentary that celebrates youth-led solutions, that celebrates their innovation, and is really a positive message of hope and change. So for those that are watching online that aren't here in Glasgow, you can tune in to watch that on the COP26 YouTube channel on Friday at 15:30 GMT. For those of you here in Glasgow, please come back tomorrow at 7 o'clock tomorrow night. We're going to previewing that documentary, celebrating youth-led solutions, celebrating youth innovation that are leading the charge against climate justice. We're going to be having we're going to finish that premiere, that preview, with a special performance from Reese Lewis as well, who will be joining us to play a live performance completely for free here at the Extreme Hangout. And I think we're just going to take a look at the trailer, and we look forward to seeing you tomorrow night. Thank you.
The crisis that we are is being caused by us, the humans.
It makes you wonder what kind of a world we will live for the next generation.
I'd like to think of us as global citizens rather than local citizens. But if you want to have great leaders of tomorrow, the leaders of now have to be great, they have to do action, they have to inspire.
Sumakmuru es más que un proyecto, es una idea potente que cree en la transformación de recursos inorgánicos que todos desechan en una nueva oportunidad de construir algo que pueda mejorar la realidad de otras personas.
From this trash, we turn it into treasure.
I feel happy that this program has been started at our school in my time, and I'm going to be part of that team to make it to reach its fruition.
We will no longer wait to grow up, to have the fancy titles, to have the years of experience.
Maybe we cannot prevent deforestation 100%, but each of us can plant some trees and make this process less impactful, in this case deforestation.
If people will not act together towards our goal to have a sustainable environment, everything we have and the future of our children will perish.
If people know that we are in a crisis, then they'll be able to act differently.
Climate change is not going to wait for us, and neither should we.